The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Monarch Fantasy. Sign the promo code SGPN to score up to $1,000 of bonus cash. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgambling.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network, the second episode of the day. It's currently Sunday night, roughly 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on August 25th. I'm Rosso Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be fun because it's time to get into the U.S. Open preview for the men's side. Did the women's episode earlier today, so if you want to check that out, do have the quarter breakdowns and the lock and dog picks as well for the women's tournament. If you want to check that out after this episode. Point is, though, going to go through the actual quarters and the actual outright picks and the lock and dogs for the first round at the end of the show, obviously. Before into that, though, do want to take care of some housekeeping. I want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also a reminder, don't forget to check out the SGPN merch store, but after you, of course, leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple, or if you are still listening to it on YouTube live stream or just the YouTube videos in general, like and subscribe. Closing in on 500. I think we're like 12 away, so definitely hoping to get there soon. As for the SGPN merch store, a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable. Recommend getting yourself something. Different colors as well, if you were interested. And point is, we also have a great deal in the merch store right now, as we do have everything off in the merch store, 10% if you use the promo code football. So once again, if you want to get yourself some Tennis Gambling Podcast merch, use the promo code football at checkout, and you'll get a nice 10% off. Plus, a reminder, check out the college football experience and the Sports Game Podcast for college football picks for week 1. So once again, week 0 already happened. Week 1, I believe, starts on Thursday. If you want some breakdowns for the games, check those two podcasts out, and they'll help you out. Now, to get into the actual recap of what happened last episode for the lock and dog picks, or 2 episodes ago, you know what I mean? We had to recap the overall Winston-Salem final. We ended up winning the lock, lost the dog. For the lock, we had the under half a tie break in the Mickelson and Sonego match at minus 121. Never in doubt, Sonego killed him as he ended up winning the first set via bagel. Truth is, Mickelson probably should have been disqualified and defaulted because he slammed the tennis ball into the stands. So I don't know why he really wasn't thrown out of the match, but whatever. It is what it is. Sonego won anyway, so I guess it didn't matter. Point is, though, the tiebreak was really never a threat, as the first set was 6-0. Sonego went up a break immediately, and he eventually won 6-3 in the second set. For the dog, picked up a loss, though, had the over 2.5 sets. Didn't get there. Thought about maybe going Sonego money line, but decided not to because we had the outright, which I'll mention in a second. Point is, though, we did like the over 2.5 sets. Didn't get there as Mickelson got destroyed. I believe it was his birthday as well, so probably not the best way to spend your birthday, getting your ass kicked again in an ATP tournament final. But either way, nice win for Sonego, who won his first hard court titles in about a year or so. So congrats to Sonego for getting the job done, and he looked great. So to go through our outright that we have to recap, we had Sonego at 29-1. Now, we had Nishioka to win in Atlanta at about 33-1 about a month ago. So 2 separate 29-1 or higher outright wins in the last month. Definitely happy about that. Sonego was actually as easy as possible because he didn't drop a set the entire tournament. Now, he did miss a match because Shang ended up withdrawing, so he had one less match to win. But he was really never in danger at all throughout the entire tournament. He was coasting. He looked fantastic. He was aggressive. He came to the net, and it just seemed like he was constantly in just a comfort zone that a lot of other people couldn't really deal with. We saw Sonego go through the entire competition with ease. Kotov did force one competitive set, but the point is, Sonego got broken one time in the entire tournament. He was amazing, and we cashed a nice 29-1 shot. So you can't complain there. Nice outright to hit entering the U.S. Open. Spoiler now, though, I'm not going to actually have many serious long shots for the men's event. If you want the long shots, check out the women's episode because you know women's tennis can be extremely unpredictable. Men's tennis, not so much. It's just the actual nature of the sport right now for the last, 15, 20 years. I feel like it's kind of the same names that are constantly winning, and I don't see that really changing in the U.S. Open. But I'll get into the preview for my outrights in a second. Point is, though, Sonego had a bad year, but we worked an eye on him, and we did notice he wasn't looking sharper over the last couple weeks. And with Winston-Salem and the courts there, thought it would actually benefit Sonego's skill set, and it did. He played the best tennis he's played probably all year, arguably in his entire career. I mean, he didn't drop us in a set in the entire event. He was cruising. No breakers either. It was just domination, and we were on the right side of it. So nice win there at 29-1 for Sonego. Hopefully some of you backed that play as well. Point is, though, time to get into the actual preview for the U.S. Open. Trying to think if there's any other news worth talking about. I know Rusevori ended up dropping out of the event as he got injured and he got replaced by Mark Terror. Don't think anybody else withdrew yet. So you might get a couple of late ones, but I don't believe anybody else dropped out. You can let me know in the comment section if I am missing anybody. But I know that Rusevori can't make it. Nadal obviously opted out. He's not going to play, but that was announced weeks ago. So I think everybody else, for the most part, is healthy. We'll see if anybody's a last-second scratch, but it should be a pretty full field, and hopefully that results in a fun tournament. Anyway, time to get into the actual preview for the U.S. Open. So, reminder, by the way, we're going to be covering every round of this event because it is a Masters 1000 or a Grand Slam. So, we're going to have an episode for, of course, the outrights, which is also going to cover the first round lock and dog picks. Then we'll get into the second round, third round, etc. So, a lot of overall episodes to have over the next week or two. So, get excited. Point is, though, looking at the actual recent winners of the event. You have Djokovic, who's the defending champion, as he beat Medvedev in straight sets last year. Alcaraz beat Ruud. You had Medvedev, who ended up beating Djokovic. Djokovic was going for the counter Grand Slam that year and ended up losing. Team beats Zverev in the COVID year. Nadal beat Medvedev in a 5-set thriller, and Djokovic beat Del Potro in straight sets. So one thing you might have noticed, you have a couple similar names. You see Djokovic a couple times. You see Nadal in there, Medvedev, you get the point. However, it is worth mentioning that players have not exactly won back-to-back titles at the U.S. Open for a long time in men's and women's. In fact, the last time a man won the U.S. Open in back-to-back years was actually about 15, 16 years ago. Roger Federer in 2007, 2008. So it has been a long time since one guy has actually successfully defended his U.S. Open title. So I'm not saying that Djokovic is in deep water here. I'm just saying, historically speaking, that does not bode well for Djokovic's chances in the event. Now, we've seen Djokovic a couple of times listed in the recent winners list, so you can still win it and then have like a gap year or two and then win it again. But historically speaking, it kind of shocked me, but it is true. Nobody's won back-to-back U.S. Open titles in basically 15, 16 years. So something to keep in mind. Point is, though, for the actual first quarter, we're going to go through the quarter odds, then we'll get into the outrights at the end. And then we'll go to break and talk about the actual lock and dog picks for the first round. So for the first quarter, this is the Sinner quarter. Shopping around, I see one. I'm going to use DraftKings for the sake of convenience for these odds here. Sinner's minus 165. You have Medvedev at 3-1. Paul at 11-1. Tsitsipas at 11-1. Felix at 14-1. Fees at 25-1. Jari at 40-1. Kaboli at 40-1. Mickelson at 40-1. You kind of get the point. So starting off with Sinner, of course, he had the cheating controversy, and then he ended up winning the title in Cincinnati anyway. But he faced off against McDonald in the first round. Pretty easy draw early on. I mean, he's going to be a massive favorite in every match. But he faced off against McDonald, who has given him problems in the past, but McDonald's had a pretty rough 2024. Then he's either against Spizzirri, who had a nice qualifying win against Fonseca in the last round. He's against Mickelson in the first round. Mickelson I'm not interested in for the event in general because he had a deep run there in Winston-Salem. Wonder about fatigue, and I do think Spizzirri actually can give him some problems in the first round. Sinner did beat him in one of the first couple rounds in Cincinnati. So we saw this matchup recently. Was somewhat competitive, but Sinner did win in straight sets. I think Mickelson's going to lose potentially early in this event, and I think that Sinner should have a pretty easy path into the third round. Then either Jari, O'Connell, Bellucci, or Wawrinka. Yeah, just give Sinner the bye into the fourth round. He's going to coast, and I do think that he's the best player here by far. Thinking of other options, Medvedev, of course, will be the popular non-favorite pick for this tournament. I can't take him. And I might have baited some of you because he is the athlete that I put on the featured image for the podcast, but I can't take him. I know he's been good in the U.S. Open in the past. We saw him beat Alcaraz last year, lost to Djokovic in the final. He's been awful for most of the year, especially the last couple months, even on hard court. And I watched him lose to Fokina in the first round. I think that was in Montreal. Point is, though, he has really been a mess for the last couple months, and I want nothing to do with him. Now, Medvedev, I think, should end up making a pretty good run because his draw is pretty favorable, as he has, for example, Lajovic in the first round, then either Morozin or Medvedev, then probably Kaboli in the third round. But the point is, I think Medvedev should make it into the fourth round, or maybe even the quarters. But could I see Tsitsipas beating him maybe? Maybe. I think that's possible. I don't trust Tsitsipas either, but the point is I think Sinner, assuming he's fully healthy, and he did win a title, a 1,000 title when he was somewhat injured anyway, I think Sinner is definitely a level above Medvedev, and Medvedev did beat him on the Wimbledon grass. But I think for the sake of the form right now, Sinner's in much better form than Medvedev. Sinner's lost 5 times, I believe, the entire year. Medvedev has been just an absolute mess, and it seems like his stoicism and his overall patience on the court has kind of deteriorated over the last year, which is one of his main strengths. So I'm not interested in Medvedev. I'm going to pass, especially at 3-1. I don't see any value on that. I think that he has a better chance of getting upset early than Sinner does. And I think for that reason, I am going to skip Medvedev in the actual quarter. Paul, I thought about. Paul actually has had some success against Medvedev earlier this year. So you can make the argument that Paul could maybe pull off an upset, but the problem is I believe Paul is in the section that Sinner's in. So he'd have to face off against Sinner first and then Medvedev, which I can't take. I think Paul's odds are better than Medvedev's if I had to pick between the two of them, but I wish Paul was against Medvedev first instead of Sinner first, and I think Paul's going to lose to Sinner. So give me Sinner by himself. However, shopping around, I found minus 125. I think this was on BetMGM. 125 is a great price. Most books have like 165, 175. But the point is I did find 125. That'll be my only pick for the first quarter in this tournament. Moving on to the second quarter. This is the Alcaraz quarter. For this one, he's minus 190, give or take. Shop around, though, a bunch of different lines. I see a decent amount of minus 200s, minus 215s. So he's the big favorite here, minus 230 on DraftKings. You have de Minaur at 11-1. Korda at 12-1, who did win in DC a couple weeks ago. You have Hurkacz at 12-1. You have Khachanov at 16-1. Draper 16-1, Safulin at 30-1, Tabilo at 35-1, Arnaldi at 35-1, Shapo 35-1, Coric at 50-1. You get the point. So the real story about Alcaraz was, one, his loss to Monfils, which happened right after getting the silver medal in the Olympics, where it was his first match back, and he said that it was the worst match he's ever played. He destroyed his racket into 1,000 pieces, and people thought that he was definitely on edge throughout the course of that matchup, and he was really bad. Now, he addressed it, and that was a couple weeks ago. The other issue with Alcaraz, you can make the argument, is his health, because he allegedly rolled an ankle in practice at the U.S. Open a couple days ago. However, according to Alcaraz, in some interviews after the incident, said he was fine. He said that he could have kept playing, but why bother? It's practice. Might as well try to keep myself healthy. Seems like the ankle is not that big of a deal, and I think that happened a couple days ago or a week ago. So I'm not concerned about the ankle. Should be fine. Of course, he'll get more of an update on it once he actually plays some real matches, and he could go from there. But he has a pretty easy path, especially in the first round, and I do think that he should be in line for a deep run. We saw him lose last year to Medvedev, but he has won this title before, and you're looking at his overall path, it is pretty favorable. He's against 2 in the first round, Australian qualifier. He should dominate that one easily. Then either Shapo or Dzanchop. If you want to talk about a head case main event for the first round, Shapo and Dzanchop, that's probably the match for you. That's just two psychos going at it there. You have Diaz Acosta against Gaston. You have Draper against Zhang. That's a fun matchup, Draper against Zhang in the first round. Point is, Alcaraz should really coast into the fourth round, and I don't see anybody standing up to him. De Minaur, once again, is a solid player. He's had some injury issues, though, over the last couple of months, which is why he ended up missing the Olympics for singles. Korda, I think, is fine, but he has a matchup against Mutet in the first round, which can be a bit tricky, and I do know that Korda is always willing to self-destruct at various points in Grand Slams. I think Alcaraz is clearly the best player here. Apologies if you're expecting a lot of long shots that I was going to throw at you to maybe upset Alcaraz early. The show's about making money, and I don't really see anybody in the quarter that's going to upset Alcaraz unless he's seriously injured with the ankle. He's so much better than everybody else here. It's not even close. De Minaur can make the argument maybe on a good day. If Alcaraz sprays a lot of unforced errors like he did against Monfils, maybe de Minaur could handle it. But de Minaur is on the other side of the bracket, and I don't know his overall health. So I'm going to have to skip him. Kind of same with Hurkacz. Hurkacz, I don't think would beat Alcaraz anyway. But the point is he also got injured, had to retire when he was against Tiafoe in Cincinnati. So I don't know what his health is. He's had some injury issues for the last couple months as well, ever since Wimbledon. So I can't take Hurkacz. Korda, I don't trust. De Minaur, I don't know his health. Khachanov usually makes deep runs in the U.S. Open, but he has not been good lately for the last couple months either. Draper's had durability concerns. I'm running out of bodies for this quarter. I just don't have anybody. So give me Alcaraz. I found minus 190. Great price compared to the rest of the market. So I do like that as a pretty decent minus price, but I said 230 on DraftKings. 190 is a much better deal. Apologies if you are expecting, once again, a couple more long shot plays. I do think you are looking at the overall spot where Alcaraz should really coast, and that's kind of what I'm expecting for this overall tournament. Now, I see a question from Captain Kirk asking me if I took a Sonego to win the tournament, but I also faded him a couple of times in the event. How does that work out? And the answer is pretty simple. The old classic cliche answer, I didn't think I'd get this far with Sonego. So it was kind of a spot where Sonego was actually making good runs, but then Goffin was in great form, and I was still skeptical of Sonego making it all the way to the finish line because I recognized it was a long shot play. I like the odds on Sonego. I thought he had the upside, and he was looking good. I don't know. Maybe it was just based on a little bit of PTSD watching Sonego implode over matches for the last year or so. I faded him a couple of times based on spot, so I am aware that the 29-1 was probably reduced based on the 2 times I faded him. Didn't like him in the final, though, against Mickelson. But to answer your question, I'm picking people that I think have upside when I'm going for longer shots, but if I actually watch them play over the course of the event, maybe I just see matchups a certain way. And Goffin, I thought, was a pretty good matchup for him. Didn't work out that way. Sonego did end up closing the dog in that one. So to answer your question, Kirk, I just have to view each matchup independently. But for the actual outrights, if I am taking some long shots, it's usually guys that I think can peak in the event, the guys that have value based on the price. So that's kind of going to answer your question. I did like Sonego in the final. Didn't really like him in the matchup against Kotov and Goffin. He proved me wrong, but we made money out of it, so can't complain. So if you turn my 19-1 into like 10-1 based on the 2 dog plays that we had that ended up losing, I can live with that. I think at the end of the day, you're just looking at a spot where Sonego caught fire, and we were able to luckily have him in the pre-tournament outright section. Either way, though, moving on into the third quarter, this one I actually do have a couple players. So if you were waiting for me to mention a couple guys besides Chalk, this quarter is the one for you. But if we're going to do the actual third quarter, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Fantasy because Pick'em gives you a chance to win 1,000 times your entry or play fantasy football the right way with Best Ball. Best Ball Mania is now live with $15 million in prizes, and specials and boosts on all flex entries. For the upcoming entry, you have a lot of tennis options. If you want to go for breaks of serve, if you want to go for potentially aces, a lot of options for you on Underdog. Sign the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time positive offer up to $1,000 bonus cash on fantasy. Promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm is a great platform. Actually, no, we're save that for after. Never mind. We ended up changing the ad rates. So once again, check out Underdog Fantasy and use the promo code SGPN to get a special pick and a first-time positive offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the first couple quarters for the U.S. Open. Time to keep it rolling with the third quarter. So looking at the quarter, this is the Zverev quarter, who I think is the most vulnerable out of all the favorites here to win their section. Zverev is around plus 120. Fritz is around plus 650. Rune is 7-1. Berrettini is at 10-1. Ruud is at 13-1. Musetti's at 16-1. Fun matchup between him and Opelka in the first round. You have Humbert at 20-1. Shang at 25-1 off of the withdrawal from Winston-Salem. Bonfils at 28-1. He's a fun match against Schwartzman. If you like throwback matches, they face off in the first round. Perricard at 35-1. You get the point. So Zverev should be the favorite to win the quarter. I recognize he's been successful here in the past. He has made 3 straight quarterfinals. He made the quarters last year, made the semis the previous one, and he also ended up making the final when he lost to Team in the COVID year. Choked away a massive lead in that match and also had a couple of opportunities in the 5th set, and he blew it. But the point is, Zverev has been good in making deep runs in the U.S. Open for the last couple of years. Am I picking him to win the event? Absolutely not. Can he make the semis? Sure. So to go through the actual thoughts for this overall quarter, I did pick Zverev as one of my choices. Not my only choice, though. I found plus 123 on Bet Rivers, but his path is pretty good. Against Marter in the first round is a lucky loser. Ruusuvuori was actually kind of a tricky matchup, and then he dropped out. So he got a luckier draw with Marter, who has been awful so far this year. But Zverev should beat him. Then either Mueller or Walton. Then you're looking at Cerundolo, has been underwhelming since the clay season. Offner, Perricard, or Echeverry. He'll be a massive favorite in that one. Then either Musetti, Nishioka, Busta, who might be injured still, or Rune. And Rune might lose in the first round to Nakashima. So the point is, I actually like the path for Zverev quite a bit. And for that reason, I am going to take him to win the quarter here. For the other options, though, I am going to go with a bit of a longer shot, a couple other longer shots. Fritz, I'm skipping. Fritz, I recognize, had a pretty good year so far. But usually, over the course of a season, Fritz has a couple of dips. And it seems like he's dipping right now, right before the U.S. Open. So I've not been a big fan of Zverev's, I'd say Fritz's form recently, pretty much since, I don't know, like Wimbledon. I haven't really been a fan of how he's played, and I think with that being the case, I'm going to avoid him in the event. His draw itself isn't that bad, but there is an interesting matchup coming up between potentially him and Berrettini in the second round. You see Fritz playing Ugo Carabelli in the first round. Should be a free win. Berrettini's against Ramos Vinolas. That should be a free one, especially on hard court. Berrettini against Fritz in the second round is a lot of fun. That should be a very fun matchup. But I decided to be a bit different here. Fritz made the quarters last year. I believe that was the first time he ever made it past the third round in the U.S. Open in his career. Historically speaking, not a great U.S. Open player. And last year, he ended up making it to the quarters. He had one of the biggest jokes of a schedule imaginable. He was facing qualifiers for like the first 4 rounds. It was kind of wild. So I do think Fritz, historically speaking, has not been good in the courts here in Flushing. And I think he's going to struggle in this environment. So I actually went with his opponent in the second round. I took Berrettini at 10-1. I figured, why not? We saw him look good on the clay courts. He ended up struggling a bit, lost to Rune on hard court, I believe, in 3. Hasn't played many matches recently, but I do like his overall potential, and I recognize that he's been good in the U.S. Open in the past. He's made a couple of deep runs, and I do think that 10-1 is a good price. If the serve or the forehand are on, he can beat anybody, and I actually think he might beat Fritz in the second round. Fritz, historically, has been underwhelming at the U.S. Open. Don't want to pick him to make a deep run. So give me Berrettini as a bit of a sleeper candidate, in my opinion, at 10-1 to win the quarter. And for my third option, it is a guy that we have not really been able to trust for the year, but I think his odds are way too high compared to others. Looking at the actual odds here, Berrettini is at 10-1, Rune is at 7-1, and Rune I know is in pretty good form in Cincinnati. I can't trust that damn guy. Fritz I said I'm not taking before. Casper Ruud is at 13-1, and I know he made the final a couple years ago, mostly because of a diminished field with, I believe, Djokovic not playing that year. Point is, though, Ruud at 13-1 for his draw is actually kind of generous. I recognize he's probably going to lose, and he's probably not going to make it to the semis because Ruud is also a head case. But I have to always mention the path for the first couple rounds. Plays a qualifier in the first round in Boo. They might go 4 sets, but I think Ruud's going to win. Then either Monfils or Schwartzman. Pretty solid draw there. 2 post-prime guys in the second round. Then either Bublik, Shang, Choinsky, or Baena, which is once again just a solid, I'd say, competition for Ruud to beat. I mean, Bublik knows a head case. Shang's had injury issues. Baena is a clay court specialist. And Choinsky probably should have lost to Cressy in the final round of qualifying. So you factor all those in, and Ruud is a pretty decent path to the fourth round. I don't mind it at 13-1. I think 13-1 is a good price for a guy that has some success here in the past. Is it going to work out? Probably not. I'm going to be honest. Like, Ruud is a guy that I think is untrustworthy, but I like the price, and I think it's an open quarter. So give me Ruud at 13-1 here in the U.S. Open. Maybe like Sonego, he kind of catches fire at the right time, and he's able to put together a good showing. We'll see, but I like the price there. I am going to fade Fritz, though, but I do like Zverev at plus 123, Berrettini at 10-1, and I am going to go with Ruud at 13-1. Quickly looking at the comments section here, my favorite, let me just see what happened here. Kevin talking about Medvedev, who was calm and not emotional for a number of years, and then everything fell apart. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's curious, maybe it's not. Point is, though, Medvedev just has been unraveling constantly on the courts over the years, and that was one of my favorite features about him, because he was so even keel that you knew if the match was going to be competitive, he was not going to be the one to self-destruct. But now he's self-destructing all the time. So I can't take Medvedev because he's got to kind of recalibrate himself mentally for me to actually trust him moving forward. Yes, he made a good run in Wimbledon anyway, but I do think it's going to be his undoing, and he's more susceptible to upsets earlier in tournaments if he's going to keep potentially yelling at his coaches and showing signs of extreme frustration over the course of matches. Besides that, Captain agrees with me about Fritz. I see Cayetano is agreeing with me about Berrettini. Yeah, I know Ruud hasn't been good either, but I like the price at 13-1. It's mostly a situation where I think Zverev is also a head case who can lose early. Spoiler for the fourth quarter, I'm not fading Djokovic. I needed something. I needed some type of quarter to potentially go nuts with, and I thought it was the third quarter. So that's kind of what I went with. Point is, though, for the fourth quarter, not going to take much time. Spoiler. We have Djokovic at 175 as the favorite, who I am going with. For the other options, you have Rublev, who has also been a head case at 6-1. Shelton, who we saw Djokovic kick his ass in the U.S. Open semis. I think that was last year, I think. You saw Tiafoe, who had a pretty good run in Cincinnati. I still don't trust him at all. He'll probably look decent in the U.S. Open because he always does. But I saw him quit last year against Shelton, and it pissed me off. Just Tiafoe is really quick to throw in the towel, and that's why I can never back him to actually make good runs. Made the semis a couple years ago, then he lost in 5 to Alcaraz, but I'm just not a Tiafoe guy. It's well documented. I don't trust him. Dimitrov at 14-1. If it was earlier in the year, maybe, but he's been terrible lately, so I can't trust him. Leheshka, I like at 25-1, but I'm not going to take him. I have questions about the durability, and I think that he is going to potentially struggle against some players in maybe a fourth or fifth set. The overall legs have not been tested that much. He was able to beat Medvedev in one of the events previously, but I still want to see a bit more. And I'm not going to suddenly pick him to make his first semifinal fresh off of an injury that he suffered where he hasn't played many matches. So I like Leheshka early in the event. The question is later in the event, do I think he might run out of gas? Maybe. Papyron at 28-1, no. Struff at 40-1. He's not been in good form lately. Fekina, no chance in hell at 40-1. You get the point. So DraftKings, by the way, has Djokovic at minus 250. Yeah, I'm not going to waste any time here. Give me Djokovic. I think that he's in great form. I agree with the move to skip the 1,000 events after the Olympics because we know how old he is at this stage in his career. And, of course, he won the Olympics without dropping a set, which is incredible. Made the final in Wimbledon, fresh off of the knee injury. So he looked fully healthy. Beat Alcaraz in straight sets in the Olympic final. Beat Tsitsipas in straight sets. Should have lost a set there, but he came back and he ended up winning. Point is, Djokovic is in great form. You can make the argument that right now he is really neck and neck with either Sinner or Alcaraz for best player in the world. So the fact is, with that being the case, I do think that Djokovic really has a very easy quarter. Rublev, we know, never beats Djokovic. He never makes it to the semis. I believe he's never made a semi. I think he's 0-11 or 12 in the quarterfinals in Grand Slams. So he's against nobody in this quarter. With Rublev being the second favorite and Shelton, who can lose to anybody because we know he's not the best returner and the unforced error count can get high here. I think it's really just a cruise for Djokovic. I don't see him dropping many sets here. I think he's going to fully dominate, and I think he's going to be able to get the job done in this overall quarter pretty easily. I see Mel asking me about Tsitsipas. Do I see him collapsing early? I mean, it's more fun when he does that. I mean, we saw him get his ass kicked by Golan a couple of years ago in the first round, where he was down like 6-0, 5-0, which was one of the more embarrassing matches I've ever seen. Against Kokkinakis in the first round, I'll tell you this. I think he'd beat Borges or Coria. I think Kokkinakis can make it interesting. I'll put it that way. I'm not saying Kokkinakis is going to win because he tends to lose every heartbreaking matchup imaginable. I can see 4 or 5 sets there. It wouldn't shock me if Kokkinakis got the serve going. Maybe Tsitsipas self-destructs again. Can I see him losing early? I think Kokkinakis is alive. I'm not saying he's going to win. I don't mind the over 3.5 sets. I think that could be a very fascinating matchup in the first round. I'll put it this way. If Tsitsipas loses to Kokkinakis in the first round, I would not be surprised. I'll put it that way. I think he'll get by, but it might be tricky. And Kokkinakis, if he would just stop losing in fifth set heartbreakers, would actually be a pretty dangerous player on tour. But he gets hurt all the time, and he also seems to always self-destruct in fourth or fifth sets. So give me a marathon match in that one, where it could be anybody's match. I'll lean to Tsitsipas, but I do think he can, in theory, lose in the first round. Moving on to the actual next thing we're going to talk about, which is the outrights for the event. So as you can tell, I went pure chalk on basically every single quarter, with the exception of the third quarter. Zverev, I trust the least out of Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Sinner. So obviously I'm picking the big three to make it into the semis. Now, for the sake of the outrights, looking at the actual odds here, you have a pretty even odd distribution here, as you have Alcaraz at around plus 200, Djokovic is plus 250, Sinner's at 350, Zverev's at 8-1, Medvedev 16-1, Rublev at 40-1. I'll put it this way: if Rublev is the cutoff here at about the sixth lowest odds, you can kind of toss everybody else out because who the hell else is going to win this event? So I'm not going to even bother going through it. If you want to take, like, for example, like Rune at 65-1, have fun. That's not going to be me. So Medvedev I'm not taking either at 16-1. I don't trust his current form, and I think mentally and emotionally, he seems a bit too unstable for me to back. So I'm going to stick with the main three because I'm not taking Zverev. I can't take. So once again, if you wanted more long shots, check out the women's episode because I don't have that for this one. I went pure chalk here. I got Alcaraz at 225 and I got Djokovic at 250. That's it. Those are the only two outrights that I have. So once again, apologies if you were expecting a couple longer shots, but I think we all know in men's tennis, long shots are donations for the actual Grand Slams. They never win. Occasionally you get a Wawrinka or like a Cilic in a dream run. It never happens. Usually you get the random guy to make it to the semis, and then they lose immediately. And I see that happening potentially in this event. But Sinner was the interesting one Because Sinner, I thought about, I still don't know how healthy he actually is, which sounds crazy because he won a 1,000 title, but he was constantly limping. He was complaining about the hip issue, and he was pretty fortunate to get Tiafoe, of all people, in the final. But I do think that Sinner, having to beat Alcaraz in the semis and Djokovic in the final, is asking way too much with his current health. If he looks better health-wise, then maybe. But Sinner, I just don't see him beating Alcaraz and Djokovic. I just don't see that happening. So I actually skip Sinner with the durability concerns and the potentially tough path. Djokovic's path is really phenomenal because he has a very easy quarter, where the second favorite is Rublev, who is really in danger of losing to anybody. I think he plays Seabold Wild in the first round. That could be fun. A point is, though, he has a matchup against probably Zverev in the semis. Could be Berrettini or somebody else. But Alcaraz and Sinner are going to kill each other on the other side of the bracket, and Djokovic is by himself. So it's a great draw for Djokovic, and I do like his form after he won the Olympics. So give me Djokovic a plus 250 there. Alcaraz, yes, he lost to Monfils. Not going to overreact. He won the French Open, he won Wimbledon, and he made the final in the Olympics. Everybody just relax a little bit. He's still in great form. He's right now a top 2 player in the world. You could argue he's 1, but the point is, I think Sinner, despite winning Cincinnati, is probably 3 if I had to go with current form. They're once again neck and neck. It's not like one guy blows the other one out. I know that Sinner is the number 1 player according to ranking, but I like Alcaraz and Djokovic. I'm skipping Sinner, not taking Zverev. I'm pure chalk here, not really doing anything else. So that's kind of where I'm at. Point is, give me the pure chalk here. Give me an Alcaraz Djokovic final, and hopefully it turns out to be a very fun one. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual outrights. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks in the first round. But for that one, remember once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm has a lot of great models for you if you want to potentially use theirs or build your own for football, whether it involves college football or the NFL. They have the number 1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors with the ability to build custom models. In seconds, you can get predictions and projections on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model or copy one of the best models according to the leaderboard. You can, once again, use it for player props as well. And they also have it for other sports like golf and WNBA. They also have some options for college football for actual game predictions. They had Delaware State plus the points, plus the 40 against Hawaii yesterday, and that got there easily as they were actually tied in the third quarter before losing. Point is, though, don't forget to try it out with a free trial, as you end up getting 7-day free trial by going to sportscampus.com, which is Rhythm, sportscampus.com, which is RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the outrights for the men's U.S. Open. Time for the lock and dog picks. Now, for these 2 picks, I did parlays. So if you do want to break down a couple of matches, I got you covered. I have a 2-pick parlay for the lock and a 2-pick parlay for the dog. For the lock, I am going to go with a 2-pick, 2 massive favorites to win in straight sets, 2 matches taking place on Monday. I am going to go Djokovic to win in straight sets, parlayed with Zverev to win in straight sets. That is at minus 105 on DraftKings. Covering why I'm going to go with this. First reason, Djokovic, we know, is in great form. Won the Olympics title. Ended up winning the... We've seen him make a lot of great performances recently. We saw him make the final in Wimbledon, won the gold medal, and then we saw him win the U.S. Open last year. I think he's definitely poised to dominate against Albot in the first round. Albot's a veteran. He's been around the block. Never been an amazing player. But the issue is really the lack of weapons that Albot has. He's undersized. Is he a good server? No. Does he have a good forehand and a backhand? Not really, kind of average. Is he a good mover? Kinda, not really. Djokovic is better in every area. So I just see Albot getting his ass kicked. You can make the argument that maybe Djokovic is off to a slow start because he hasn't played in a couple of months since the Olympics, or about a month. Point is, though, I actually like the move. Let him stay healthy. Let him be rested. But Djokovic, once he gets into deep rallies, which most of these points should be, I obviously favor Djokovic over anybody in long rallies. So give me Djokovic to get the job done in straight sets. Maybe one competitive set, but he should break Albot's serve multiple times per set. So I see him winning this pretty easily. Give me Djokovic in straight sets as the first leg. For Zverev, he's been good on hard court. He is 23-8 on hard court this year. Marter is only here because Ruusuvuori dropped out, because he lost in qualifying to Kruger, got killed by Kruger in qualifying, and then Ruusuvuori dropped and he got accepted as a lucky loser. But the point is, this year has been awful on hard court. He's 4-9, been a mess in 2024. So not exactly in good form. I see this being ugly. Face off last year in Hamburg on clay, Zverev did win in straight sets. Zverev, once again, is a guy that I don't trust long-term, Short term, I think he's in line for a good showing. He's made it to at least the quarterfinals in 3 straight U.S. Opens. I think we'll get by his fellow countrymen here in straight sets. So give me the 2-pick parlay here. Djokovic in straight sets with Zverev in straight sets at -105 on DraftKings. Now for the dog, I am going to go with both players who win a set in 2 separate matches. First match is the Bergs and Kotov match. Second match is the Medjedovic and Morozin match. And both those matches to go over 3.5 sets is +129 on Caesars. So Bergs has been feisty, but he's been dropping sets a lot recently. Bergs has dropped at least 1 set in 7 straight matches, and Kotov's dropped at least 1 set in 11 straight matches. So even in his decent run in Winston-Salem, where he eventually lost to Sonego, he did drop a set in the first round and first couple rounds. And I do think that he's in line to once again have a streaky performance in this matchup. But look at the head-to-head. They faced off a couple times. Each of the last 2 head-to-head meetings did not end in straight sets. And I do think that should result in at least a 4 or 5 set thriller between Bergs and Kotov in the first round. As for Medjedovic, he went through qualifying, but he dropped a set in every round. And he has dropped at least 1 set in 6 of the last 7. So he's been fine, but he has not been consistent, and I do think he's vulnerable to drop at least 1 set here. Morozin, we saw beat Dimitrov on hard court a couple weeks ago. He's also been dropping sets, though, has dropped at least 1 set as well in 6 of his last 7. So both guys have not exactly been able to take care of business easily, and both guys I do think should be able to battle it out. Medjedovic has a good serve, can hit a lot of unforced errors. Morozin is pretty sturdy, but the second serve's atrocious. So I do think you're going to see a pretty balanced matchup between those two. Maybe 5-setter in that one. But you're looking at the head-to-head, they faced off 3 times. 2 of the 3 did go to a third set, or a deciding set. So point is, I do think based on the breakdown of these 2 matches, the competitive head-to-head nature of them, and just based on the form that both guys are in the Bergs-Kotov match and the Medjedovic-Morozin match, I see marathons. I really don't see either guy winning in straight sets, so I'm going to go with that 2-pick parlay as my dog. So once again, the lock and out picks for the show. The lock's going to be on Djokovic in straight sets, parlay to Zverev in straight sets at -105. For the dog, I am going to go with Bergs and Kotov match over 3.5 sets, parlayed with Medjedovic and Morozin over 3.5 sets in the match at +129. Let's wrap it up for this episode. A reminder that we are going to be back for the second round of the men's tournament in about a day or 2, so stay tuned for that. For the women's, probably going to come back for the quarters for the U.S. Open, but not going to cover each round. Until next time, find me on Twitter, find me on the NBA show, WNBA show, and find me on the MLB show as well. WNBA show, we'll be having another episode in about an hour. So if you do want some thoughts for the Monday card, check out the WNBA show. Until next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.